Hey, today I want to talk about the complexity industry. What is the complexity industry? It is a real conspiracy of all kinds of people and all kinds of structures to just make you succeeding in your business as difficult as possible. How many hoops, how many hurdles? The complexity industry is made up of accountants and attorneys and bureaucrats and compliance people and HR people, everybody out there whose job it is to bring chaos into what ought to be a pretty simple process. Why, for example, does an employee handbook look like this? Chances are you're in an employee at will state. And if you're a small business, you don't need all that bullshit. You're not going to fire anybody. The last thing you want to do is fire somebody for reasons that aren't legitimate. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the complexity industry and how you manage it so that you don't get bogged down by all this crazy stuff.
Welcome to the Communication Culture, where we help entrepreneurs and small businesses build transparency and accountability through effective communications. If you like this content, let's talk. Email Loy at loyedge.com or call 877-LOY-EDGE. Now, here we go.
There are a million ways that you get gaslighted as a business person by the complexity industry. And we're going to talk about this a lot. It's going to be a recurring theme in these videos because it's so insidious. But as an employer, as a small business person, as an entrepreneur, you're very used to assessing risk and reward. Remember risk? That was that thing that entrepreneurs used to take before it was dismissed as such a stupid thing by all the complexity industry, all the zero-sum thinkers out there whose job it is to shuffle papers around. Now, there's a place for all these professionals and they provide a valuable service, but you've got to be hyper aware of the fact that their goal is to push you as a business person to the center of a compliance box where everything they tell you is like wrapping you with bubble wrap. They want to push you toward the very center of safety within the compliance box. Now, the compliance box, of course, has a boundary around it that is, some people might call it, and I hate this term, best practices. As a person who hates conventional wisdom, I hate that term, best practices, but to the compliance person's viewpoint, that's kind of the parameter that they're working within. Now, as an entrepreneur, you realize that that box is much broader. It actually goes all the way out to settled law. In other words, all things are fair as long as they're legal and ethical. Not best practices as determined by a bunch of lawyers or accountants. So it's really hard to get any kind of really dynamic advice or thoughtful instruction from the people whose job it is to manage risk. This is why it's important to have a cry BS person that you can count on that can translate or push the people who are taking care of your legal and your, your accounting and your, all the myriad of regulations that you have to follow. You really need somebody with a more entrepreneurial perspective to look over your shoulder and make sure you're not getting pushed into some bubble wrap box. So, as I talked about this employee handbook, and that's the one thing I'm going to talk about today is the whole HR complexity industry deal. Now, chances are you're in a state where it's employment at will. You're not like a multinational corporation or the government. If you have an employee who's a toxic presence in your company, somebody who is not measuring up, you've got to get them the hell out of your company. You can't wait around for some grace period or give them counseling or any of this other stuff. If you've identified somebody as a problem, believe me, you've got to get them out of your organization as soon as possible, because it spreads. If you're going to have an effective communication culture, these people will be the sand in the gearbox. They're going to spread negativity. And so no matter what the HR people tell you, oh, well, you're going to have to, build a case, blah, blah, blah. This is not legal advice. This is not official HR advice. I just want to get your mindset turned around so that you realize all of that stuff is moot if you can just demonstrate in court, if necessary, that this person was terminated for just cause. So if you have a communication culture in place, you've got reports that are coming to you and being responded to, and so there is a written exchange, and people who suck, people who have big problems, are not going to be able to conform to the demands of objective, detailed, specific communications, because they must hide behind chaos. So keep in mind that one of the big advantages to a communication culture is you're going to immediately be able to identify toxic people. And number two, you're going to be able to prove that these people didn't belong in your organization. Now, we're going to talk about the complexity culture more later, but keep in mind, you've got to quit getting bullied by all these professionals who give you advice and try to push you into the box. We'll talk to you later on the communication culture.